In 2015, an unexpected jawbone emerged from the ancient soil of France's Rhone Valley, a find so complete it was sealed off on the spot. But when scientists pried open the secrets locked in its teeth, they uncovered a forgotten Neanderthal lineage, isolated for over 100,000 years and untouched by modern humans. Suddenly, the final chapter of Neanderthal history was rewritten. How could one discovery upend everything we thought we knew about our closest relatives? The answer lies at the heart of Mandrin, and its implications reach far beyond paleontology. A trowel struck dense, ancient bone. The excavation team froze. Every movement in the cramped trench at Mandrin became deliberate, measured. Ludovic Slimak, leading the dig, crouched beside the exposed jaw. Years of anticipation gave way to a single, silent moment. The jawbone was nearly whole, molars intact, a rarity for Neanderthal finds, which usually surface as scattered fragments. Without hesitation, Slimak ordered the trench sealed. No one touched the bone. The surrounding soil, undisturbed for tens of thousands of years, would remain a barrier against contamination. The protocols were strict and immediate. No tools came near the specimen until the team could document every grain of earth around it. Field logs recorded the precise coordinates, the depth, and the orientation of the mandible. Gloves, masks, and sterile suits became mandatory. The team worked in shifts, limiting exposure, trading speed for certainty. Every action was dictated by the need to preserve not just the bone, but its story. The chemical traces in the sediment, the microscopic particles clinging to the enamel, the untouched pulp inside the teeth. The decision to halt all digging in that section was not taken lightly. Mandrin's layers had already revealed alternating traces of Neanderthals and modern humans, but nothing this complete, this potentially revealing. The context had to remain pristine. Any disruption could erase clues about the world Thorin lived in. The team constructed a protective barrier over the trench, using plastic sheeting and sandbags to shield the find from the elements and from human interference alike. Slimak's urgency was grounded in experience. For decades, he had watched discoveries lose their scientific value through hasty handling or careless documentation. Here, the stakes were higher. The Rhone Valley was a crossroads. Its caves held the secrets of both Neanderthals and the first modern Europeans. The completeness of the jaw means it might hold more than just the shape of a face. It could carry the genetic code of a vanished population. As the sun set over the valley, the team left the sealed trench behind, guarded by the weight of what they had uncovered. The find was already known among them as Thorin, a name chosen for its sense of finality, the last of a kind. The jaw rested in darkness, untouched, suspended between worlds. In the days that followed, every return to the site began with the same ritual. Check the seals, review the logs, approach with care. The next steps would demand even greater precision, but the first act was one of restraint, an insistence on silence, patience, and the preservation of a moment that might just change what we know about the end of the Neanderthals. Mandrin sits high above the Rhone River, its entrance carved into limestone 225 meters above the valley floor. From this vantage, the cave commands a sweeping view of the corridor below, a natural highway that has linked the Mediterranean to the heart of Europe for hundreds of thousands of years. For Ludovic Slimak, this was never just another site. The Rhone Valley is more than a picturesque landscape. It is a crossroads, a place where waves of ancient people moved, mingled, and sometimes vanished. The cave itself holds a geological record as deep as its history. 12 distinct sedimentary layers, labeled from J at the bottom to B1 at the top, are stacked like the pages of a book. Each tells the story of a different moment in time. Some layers are rich with Mysterian tools, flint flakes and scrapers shaped by Neanderthal hands. Others reveal a sudden shift. Tiny, precise points, the calling card of modern humans, appear abruptly in layer E. Then, just as quickly, the old ways return. Layer D and then C see Neanderthal groups reclaiming the shelter, their tools unchanged. as if nothing had happened. Thorin was found in Layer C, a stratum that dates to roughly 45,000 to 50,000 years ago. This is not the bottom of the sequence, nor the top, but a turning point. The sediment here is dense and undisturbed, sealed by centuries of dust and wind-blown sand. Every artifact, every fragment of bone, sits exactly where it was left. The cave's unique stratigraphy, so precise that even the soot from ancient fires can be traced layer by layer, allows scientists to reconstruct who lived here and when. Sigolene van de Velde's analysis of sooted wall fragments suggests that human visits spanned 80,000 years, with Neanderthal and modern humans sometimes separated by as little as a single year. The Rhone corridor itself shaped these patterns. It offered a passage through the rugged hills, channeling migrations north and south. When modern humans arrived, their presence was marked by new tools and brief occupation. Yet the Neanderthal groups returned, undeterred, and left behind Thorin's jaw as silent testimony. The alternating layers at Mandrin are rare. Few sites in Europe capture such clear evidence of population turnover. Here, the landscape and the cave together reveal a story of resilience, displacement, and return. For Slimak, each excavation season was a step deeper into this layered history. The cave's position, its sedimentary record, and its role as a gateway between worlds made every find more meaningful. Thorin's mandible was not just a fossil, it was a piece of a larger puzzle, linking the fate of a vanished people to the geography that shaped their final days. Thorin's jaw, cradled by layers of sediment for nearly 50,000 years, stands apart from most Neanderthal discoveries. Where other finds yield only broken fragments, a tooth here, a sliver of bone there, Thorin's mandible arrived almost whole, its arc unbroken, its teeth still rooted in place. The jaw's preservation is more than a stroke of luck. Each tooth is a record of a lifetime, meals chewed, grit worn down, seasons marked by subtle lines in enamel. But the true treasure lies deeper, hidden inside the fortress of the molars. Dental pulp, sealed off from the world by dense enamel and dentin, forms a micro-environment untouched by the centuries. This soft tissue, nestled within the hard shell, is where living blood vessels and nerves once threaded through Thorin's jaw. In the cold, dry air of Grotta Mandrin, with sediment pressing in from all sides, the pulp became a vault, shielding genetic material from decay, bacteria, and the slow invasion of time. Even after tens of thousands of years, fragments of DNA could still be recovered, preserved in the pulp's protected chamber. What makes Thorin's jaw so remarkable is not just its completeness, but its anatomical details. 14 permanent teeth, each in its original position, allowed researchers to map out the individual's age, diet, and even moments of stress or illness. The molars show robust roots and thick enamel, classic hallmarks of Neanderthal adaptation to a tough, abrasive diet. No extra teeth or dental anomalies complicate the picture, just a full adult set, symmetrical and strong. Measurements confirm a broad, heavy jaw with a receding chin and a pronounced retromolar gap, features found only in Neanderthals. For the team, Thorin was never just a fossil. The jaw's resilience hinted at a life spent surviving harsh winters, gnawing on sinew and bone, navigating the same valley slopes that now echo with the sound of distant traffic. The completeness of the specimen offered a rare chance to reach back across millennia and meet a Neanderthal not as a shadow, but as a person. It also justified the risk of sampling, drilling into a molar to extract the pulp, knowing that within those tiny chambers might rest the genetic code of one of Europe's last Neanderthals. The journey from jawbone to genome would demand even stricter care, but the promise was clear. Thorin's teeth held secrets that fragments alone could never reveal. A courier arrived at the Max Planck Institute carrying a chilled, sealed container inside Thorin's molar, shielded from the outside world since the moment of discovery. The chain of custody was unbroken, every handoff logged, every temperature monitored. Once inside the ancient DNA facility, the specimen entered a world defined by absence. No dust, no stray hair, no breath unfiltered. Dr. Anna Kern, head of the extraction team, oversaw the operation from behind a glass partition. Researchers donned full-body suits, double gloves taped at the wrists, masks, and face shields. The lab itself was a positive pressure fortress, air flowing outward to repel any contaminant. Surfaces glowed under ultraviolet lamps, sterilized for hours before the sample arrived. Every instrument, pipette, drill bit, microcentrifuge tube, was baked or irradiated until even the memory of modern DNA had been erased. The protocol was relentless. The outer surface of the tooth was scrubbed, then blasted with UV to destroy any trace of human DNA that might have settled since excavation. Only then did the team drill into the root, collecting fine powder from the pulp chamber. The drill ran slow and cold, its bit replaced after every sample. The powder fell into a sterile tube, never exposed to open air. Kern checked each step, her gloved hands steady, her eyes fixed on the readout. The sample was mixed with silica and binding buffers, chemistry designed to coax ancient fragments of DNA from the mineral matrix, binding them to glass beads so the rest could be washed away. Every transfer was performed in a laminar flow hood, shielded from the room by a curtain of sterile air. The yield was a roll of the dice. Ancient DNA is always a gamble. Thousands of years in the ground can shred genomes into unreadable scraps. But Thorin's pulp delivered. Sequencing runs produced over 20 million reads. 4% of those were endogenous, genuine Neanderthal DNA, an extraordinary proportion for a specimen this old. Kern's team ran authentication checks. Damage patterns in the DNA, the telltale signature of cytosine deamination at fragment ends, confirmed its antiquity. Negative controls showed no sign of modern contamination. The dataset was clean, the sequence authentic. Thorin's genetic code could finally be read, a voice from a vanished world, preserved by discipline and the relentless pursuit of certainty. Dating Thorin's jaw required more than a single test or a lucky guess. The process began with radiocarbon analysis, targeting the organic remains from Layer C at Grotte Mandrin. But the results pressed against the upper limits of what radiocarbon can measure. Readings hovered just below 50,000 years before present, at the very edge of the NT-Cal 20 calibration curve. To strengthen the case, the team turned to optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, which measures the last time sediment grains saw sunlight. Samples from the same layer yielded an age of approximately 51,000 years, supporting the radiocarbon estimates. These numbers alone could not satisfy the demands of proof. The cave's stratigraphy was brought into the equation, with each layer's order and composition mapped in detail. Charcoal from ancient hearths, animal bones, and stone tools provided additional data points. Soot traces on the cave walls, analyzed by Segeline van de Velde, confirmed frequent human presence and allowed the team to pinpoint occupation intervals to within a few centuries, or in some cases, just a year. Bringing all this evidence together required Bayesian modeling, a statistical approach that combines multiple lines of data to refine the estimate. By integrating radiocarbon dates, OSL results, and the precise order of the sedimentary layers, the model produced a posterior probability. Thorin's jaw was deposited between 52,900 and 48,500 calibrated years before present, with the highest likelihood centering on 50,000 years, plus or minus 2 millennia. This convergence of methods left little room for doubt. Thorin lived at a time when Neanderthals were thought to have vanished from much of Europe. The evidence anchored him at the very tail end of his species' history, surviving in the Rhone Valley long after modern humans had already passed through. As dating specialists like Laure Metz and Jean-Jacques Hublin reviewed the results, the consensus was clear. Grotte Mandrin had delivered one of the last Neanderthals, preserved in a timeline that no longer belonged to his kind. Thorin's genetic code did not fit any known pattern. When the sequence data came back from the Max Planck Institute, the team realized they were looking at a statistical outlier, an individual whose genome stood apart from every other late Neanderthal sampled across Europe. Comparative analysis mapped Thorin's DNA not to the classic Neanderthal clusters from Vindija or Spy, but to a branch separated by more than 100,000 years of isolation. The divergence was so extreme that at first, the algorithms flagged Thorin as far older than the archaeological context allowed. Only after months of cross-checking with coalescent modeling did the timeline settle. Thorin had lived around 50,000 years ago, but his ancestors had split from their cousins long before the last Neanderthal gatherings in Central Europe. The data showed high levels of homozygosity, long stretches of identical DNA, a hallmark of inbreeding within a small, closed group. There was no sign of modern human genes, no evidence of recent contact with other Neanderthal populations. Thorin's lineage had been marooned genetically and geographically in the Western Mediterranean for millennia. This was not a population swept away by a single wave of newcomers, but a hidden fragment, one of several ghost lineages that endured on the fringes of a changing continent. Population modeling pointed to a multi-refugia scenario. Pockets of Neanderthals, each isolated in their own valleys or coastlines, surviving long after their numbers had collapsed elsewhere. The genome's silence on Homo sapiens introgression told its own story. Thorin's people had watched the arrival of new technologies and new faces, but kept to themselves, their genetic legacy sealed behind cultural and social barriers as much as mountains or rivers. Professor Simon Hawkes summarized the revelation in a single line. Thorin is not just the last of his kind, he is the last of a lost world. The discovery forced researchers to rethink extinction itself. The end of the Neanderthals was not a single event, but a slow unraveling, with isolated groups like Thorin's fading from the record, their secrets locked away until now. Today, every new fragment of ancient DNA redraws the borders of human history. As technology reveals hidden lineages, the story of our species grows more complex and less solitary. Neanderthal echoes persist in our genomes, challenging what it means to be human. The past is not finished with us yet. What secrets do we still carry, waiting to be found? Share your thoughts below.